Well, my name is, do you hear me well? Let's put it here. Okay. Well, my name is Antonio Ponte. I'm Deposit Product Manager at Citibank North America in Corporate and Investment Bank. The business unit is cash management, and basically we provide cash management product and services to treasurers of financial corporations. Full disclaimer, I'm not a technical person. I'm a product manager, more in the business side. And this framework or methodology is aimed to guide the conversation between business, technology, and also the control units, legal, compliance, and audit. So basically, this is a framework to guide the conversation. You might have seen this spectacular, beautiful slide at least 1,000 times that basically tell the history of ChatGPT. That is the fastest adopted application in history. 100 million users in just 2 months. And it's not because just the technology, it's because it was very easy to use, which means was a great client experience. So we are going to talk more about that later. And just to set a few basic concepts, ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence system, an artificial intelligence chatbot that emulates human conversations at human intelligence level. This is based off foundational models that are neural networks, very big neural networks of billions of parameters that based on a technology that is called transformers that was created by Google in 2017. One of the points of these large language models is that they can understand text, understand images, videos, and speeches, voice recognition, but also they can generate videos, images, text, and voices. They can make suggestions, follow instructions, and trigger actions. Okay, so they potentially can become autonomous. So, and this has very huge implication for businesses and how we live our life. But these technologies are called generative AI, and basically we are going to focus for simplicity in large language models and ChatGPT. Basically, as we were saying, these are artificial intelligence models that are human competitive intelligence and general task. They also have the ability to create new content, which means that they emulate human creativity, and also promise to bring us exponential improvement in human productivity in many of these tasks. One important point here is that these large language models are extraordinary information integrators, knowledge integrators. So it's basically they are expert in managing knowledge. Okay, they can make suggestions and trigger different actions. But how smart is ChatGPT? For example, ChatGPT-4 was tested, and they performed significantly over the average in many of the tests against human or above the average. This means that not necessarily today can replace humans, but definitely can help us to improve productivity in many of the tasks that we do today. However, this doesn't come without risk, and there are many, but the main one is that because one of the characteristics that have these models is that they have emerging capabilities, emerging behaviors that the programmers didn't program, they didn't mean to have. So when they are unpredictable, that's what makes them generative. And in that sense, they are probabilistic as well. And in that sense, we cannot always trust in the output that they have. They require human validation, human criteria. And it's probably one of the main risks that we have when using this technology. But what really is going to be the impact of generative AI? Well, this is a study of McKinsey, but basically they review, they list several jobs and what were the tasks, and listed against what were the qualification required to do that job. So basically what they found is that the task with that were more susceptible to be automated were the tasks that require higher levels of degree, for example, master degrees, PhD. And then they were followed by bachelor degrees. Okay, that doesn't mean that we are going to eliminate those jobs, but many of the tasks that they do can be simplified or eliminated, which means that these job and positions can be also have significantly improvements in the productivity, not necessarily are going to be replaced. And they have huge implications in several areas of the organization. For example, software engineers that are very specialized task coding are very successful to be improve and automate many of the tasks, customer operations, customer supports that require a lot of customer expertise or product expertise, marketing, sales, those all of them that require a lot of knowledge can be automated or can be significantly improved with this technology. But what is the impact, the economic impact of this? Well, several studies have shown that by 2030, the economic impact in market value is going to be $13 trillion. And that also, this is a huge, this is just in 7 years. And also the cost of training these new models is going to decrease significantly, following very similar pattern that's Moore's law, that is the speed of the CPU. So this is going to, I mean, training a GPT model is going to be cheaper and cheaper as the time passes. And because all of these implications, all of these factors, there is a race in the majority of organizations and industries to include generative AIs in the products and services, using their own data as a not only competitive advantage, but a future way to survive and stay relevant in their own industries. So let's get into the topic. LLM, this framework of large language models for adoption in the enterprise is basically what we follow in the bank. And what we did is to simplify in six steps and 3 phases. The idea is that you can insert these guidances into your organization, the way you do product development or project management, and try to use this guidance to drive those models. The first one is identify use cases and prioritization. Here, what you are going to find is that in your organization, you have dozens, if not hundreds, of potential use cases, because this is a generic technology that have a lot of tasks that can be improved and performed. For example, knowledge management, what we saw. Also, they can follow instructions, so there are many things that are susceptible to automate. You will have dozens or hundreds of different use cases in different businesses and in different areas of your products or inside your organization. So what they're going to do is that, and this is now to the next step, each of these cases are not going to be solved in the same way. The LLMs have different architectural choices, and we're going to see in the next slide, and many of our colleagues have talked about them today. that are depending on the type of language model that you are using. Not all language models are creating the same. Some are open sources, some are private, some you can consume using APIs, some that you can deploy in your premises. You also did, when selecting in the phase 2 what is going to be the architecture for each of these use cases, you also need to consider pricing, the cost of using that language model. You need to consider, for example, licensing. Not all models, not always the output of that model is going to belong to you. So there are different considerations that we're going to see in the next slide. So in this phase, you are going to keep iterating until you have clearly understanding what is the use cases, how you are going to solve it, and in which architecture. And after that, you are going to start saying, well, what are going to be my early wins? What are the ones that I can implement right away to have a big impact? We check a lot of well, what are the use cases that are going to impact the most across different functions. That's those kind of considerations that you can do. Then we're going to have a third step, that is basically start developing those MVPs and proof of concepts. And this is where you are going to gain the most knowledge and most expertise in the organization. Here, you can do it in several ways. You can start with, for example, with ChatGPT, a private model using API for fast development. You can use coding or no-code tools for fast development just to test the model, and then you can go to other versions. For example, adopting fine-tuning an open source model. That's those things that are the things that you can do. And also in this phase, if you haven't done it before, you need to include your control units, okay, legal, compliance, and audit, because they are going to be key partners. Actually, probably they are going to be one of the main users of the application of these large language models. So when you have this, then you are going to go to the fourth step, that is basically evaluating the MVP and doing adjustment. And you are going to keep in this loop until you have something that is ready to use. In this phase, you are going to, there are several ways to evaluate large language models and define the metrics that you need to use that we're going to see in later slides. The fifth step is basically, once you have a model that is in production, then you probably want to switch to agile methodologies and keep prioritizing client experience. And also you are going to keep refining the different methods, decision architectures, regardless it's going to be prompt engineer, fine-tuning, or RAG, that we are going to see later. And the final step is create a strong governance, and I cannot, the sixth step, and I cannot emphasize this enough. We need to have a very strong governance about the LLMs because of the unpredictable nature that they have. Okay, these have to be a recurrent process of auditing to improve not only the model, but to ensure that they are doing what is expected to do. Now, we are going to see in each of the cases the different examples how we are going to do these steps. But first, let's talk about how is going to, the four ways that generative AI is going to be adopted in the organization. The first one is all the vendors that you have today in your organization. For example, if you use Microsoft or if you use Google, okay, they are already embedding generative AI in their application. So probably if you use the newer versions, you are already using generative AI, Copilot, or those kind of things. If you are using, for example, software development, there are a lot of new tools that you probably are start using again. And this is that is happening also in CRM. There are many CRMs that have include generative AIs in their application. So if your organization do nothing, just your vendors, the systems that you are using, are going to include generative AI in your application. So what is going to happen in your organization is that you need to your employees are going to need to relearn how to do their jobs, but now using generative AI, not only to gain the productivity, but also to stay relevant. Okay, that is basically a way that all the companies are going to be forced to learn and adopt generative AI. The second one that is more proactive, that is, well, I want to use generative AI using APIs, just basically private models. I'm going to use it for internal productivity, or I want to insert that in my products and services. That's another option, and you can start using that very easy and very quickly using API, using proprietary models. The third one is basically to use, for example, open models, and in a cloud architecture, or you can use open models in a private architecture. For example, banks cannot use, the majority of the bank cannot use a cloud architecture. They need to have that information, because we manage a lot of private information in our private cloud. So basically what we can do is, or we can use, for example, a private model, ChatGPT, and fine tuning, and we're going to see what is that in the later slide, with in a private, in a public infrastructure, or in a private infrastructure. And this that basically the four ways that companies are adopting and solving all of those use cases. And as you see, each use cases will have the different levels of different application based off these applications. Another important point is that LLM, or not all LLMs, large language models, are created the same. This is a list of one of the most popular, but there are much more. You can see there are different sizes. For example, Llama, that is from Meta, is 70 billion parameters. ChatGPT is 1.7 trillion. ChatGPT is just ChatGPT-4. ChatGPT 3 is 175 billion. Different sizes. Not all have the same capabilities. There are some better for some use cases and for others. And this is part of the conversation that technology and business needs to have in selecting the models, and you can test many of them with the same infrastructure. You need to also consider, for example, if you are going to use public data, or if you're going to use private data of the company, that is something that is relevant for selecting and using this. And it's important here to mention that the cost and the licensing. Not all of these models you own the rights to use the outputs. Some of them whatever output you produce from them, you own it. You don't have licensing issues. Okay, related to the element architectures that you need to have, and other speakers had already discussed them. Well, the first one is basically the plain vanilla, that is prompt engineer. That, just to explain a little bit in a simple way, what is that? Is to we're going to structure the request in a way that is going to allow the LLM to provide us with data or information or the output as we need it, okay? And this could be very, very complex. Today is basically an art as a science itself. That is without touching the element, and you can do it for open source or private elements. The second one is fine tuning. That is a very relative cheap way to customize if the large language model do not have the domain or the capabilities of the domain that you have, for example, financial institution, or you want to use part of your own data, you can train the model in not only in your knowledge expertise, but also to make improvement in the tasks that you want to perform of them. And fine-tuning, they are very cheaper ways that training since the beginning. And the last one is what we call, that is very useful, that what called retrieval augmented generation. That is what allow us to eliminate the hallucination. Hallucination, as we recall, is when we ask the model a question and they provide an answer that seems right but is not. The elements can be very convincing at presenting facts, but those facts not necessarily are accurate. Using this technique is proven because and how this technique works is that you are going to put a repository of information that could be files in your company, to could be reference to internet specific site, or could be a structured database. We are going to create a vectorized database, and the LLM is going to retrieve information from them, and it's going to put it inside the LLM to provide the information. So it's not going to be based on the knowledge that they have the LLM. It's going to be based off your own information, and this is basically the most secure way, for example, banks and companies to provide information that we need. Another important point is to select the LLM software management that you need, or the LLM coding framework. The most popular is launching, and basically this is important because this is going to be kind of your operative system. Okay, this is going to be the one that is going to allow to coordinate how I interact with the large language model, and you can have more than one. And it's going to allow you also to connect with your embedding databases, your external sources. It's going to allow you to coordinate or organize your prompts for prompt engineers. And we have this change, that are basically connectivities, logic connectivities again, among the different components. And at the end, you are going to have the agents that is going to coordinate the different events, that how they will happen among all of this ecosystem. We're talking at this moment in terms of applications, simple application. But if you want, go one level up, okay? When you have this more adopted in your organization, this probably is going to become the operative system, the intelligence of your organization, okay? Because you are going to have several workflows that you are going to introduce intelligence, and they are going to manage probably the process of organization at some point of time, okay? And humans are going to interact with that operative semantic intelligence. Okay, evaluating LLM models. There is a explosion. The last 4 or 5 months have been an explosion of material about how to evaluate LLM models, because this unpredictability, this is an emerging field. And we're going to talk about the 4 main ones, okay? First is using public benchmark, that are LLM models, to evaluate your own LLM models or the one that you are, just for example, if you fine tune or you are going to use a private, you can use those benchmarks to evaluate of them. It's important that for evaluating, you set the correct metrics and use the correct data in order to evaluate the specific task that you want to perform, and we're going to see more in the next slide. The second option is this user testing, that basically are small sets of questions that are going to help to evaluate the model. That are relative cheap. These are basically non-experts that are going to help you to evaluate the model. The third one is to perform ask the model, your model, to auto-evaluate through using prompt engineer. There are several techniques that could be very efficient and effective to do some evaluation. And the last one, that is the one that is more accurate and more expensive, but also have some risk, that is human expert evaluations, human qualified evaluations to do those testings. Because this is an emerging field, okay? Let's focus, and it's very important. Let's focus in how to be successful here and what have been the best practice. Well, first, defining the metrics is super critical, and the better quality data, the more quality of the data they are going to use to evaluate those metrics against the model, the better. This is a decision tree. I'm not going to go through that, but this is a decision tree that can help you to select the correct metrics according to your task. And also, there is a best practice that have been proven with several companies, that you can combine the 4 approach that we listed before in this way. You are going to use the public benchmark and the LLM auto-evaluations to train a using prompt engineer to do the evaluations of the models, and then you are going to have user or these qualified trainers, people that is going to evaluate the evaluations that they did automated, okay? And this is going to have better performance. This end-to-end we're going to talk about is basically the governance part. This is a series of criteria that were published by DeepMind about how to evaluate and how to manage the models. And this is something that you are going to discuss with your legal and compliance people. And at the end, to create a strong governance, there is a 3 layers approach that was published by Yale and Oxford in combination of the Center of the artificial intelligence, that basically you have 3 layers in audits and measurements in audit applications, processes and metrics for LLM models, and also the governance part that is going to combine these 2 and with the rest of the organization, okay? You can see more if you check the paper, okay? I want to close here to see if we can have time for a couple of questions, and you can have here the material if you want to check. Do we have time for